In this video, we're going over chapter 14, and as always, you'll have some items embedded within it to earn yourself reviewing it an easy 100. Remember that the Cornelians in chapter 13 have had a mishap, a crash. They almost crashed into a Cesium-driven light-to-wheel carriage courier, a tabularius, and have ended up in the ditch. And so here in this chapter, Cornelius, very angry, is wanting to know who is to blame. Ubi descendet rida infosam. When the minivan goes down, climbs down, descended. Please do not confuse this with the verb discaded. They are similar, I suppose, but this is the verb he or she or it goes away. This is he or she or it climbs down. When the minivan climbs down, in plus accusative into the ditch, all fall down. A new verb of this chapter, concito, concidere, to fall down. Now, this is nothing more than the verb cado, cadere, that we have seen before. And when you put a cone on the front of it, emphasizing not just to fall, but to fall completely. See, completely. Very often, by putting a prefix on the front of a verb, it will change the vowel from whatever it is to the letter I. That's why it's concedent. They all fall down. Omnes, a third declension adjective with a third declension ending. Nemo, which remember is nominative, it is the variant form. No one, however, falls out of the carriage. Do you see the cadet without the cone in the front of it? A-X out of. Moxoon. I think that is not a new word in this chapter, but moxoon. Cuncti, all. Cuncti and omnes, synonyms. They mean essentially the same thing. So they all climb down, in plus accusative, into the road, out of the carriage. They all do it. They, the solicity ones, the anxious ones, but the unharmed ones. Note that this is a first and second declension adjective, modifying they, the family. And this is a third declension. You can tell what kind of an adjective. There are only two types by the kind of endings that they have. Cornelius. And by the way, why it is masculine, it's because as long as you have one masculine element, the whole group becomes masculine. So this would be the masculine omnes, although the feminine would look exactly like it. Cornelius. Quam. Remember, this means although he rejoices, gaudio gaudere, right? Because all, it's substantized, all the people, all the family members are not hurt, unharmed. All linking verbs with equal signs. Nominative plural, nominative plural. He scolds, he reprehends the miserable chauffeur, coachman, coach driver. Age sire. Look at that imperative. Drive on. From the verb ago, agere. Chop off the re. A command. Cirrus, talking directly to him, changing that us to an e for the vocative. Noli cessare. Don't be idle. Cesso cessare means to be idle, to do nothing. Where we get the English word cessation, a stoppage. Drag the minivan out of the ditch immediately. Trahe comes from the verb trahere, but you just chop off the re, so drag X out, the minivan, out of the ditch immediately. Therefore, igitu. Cirrus urges on, incitat, the horses. The horses, here they were the accusative direct object, here they are the nominative subject. They drag, they pull, trahere, the minivan strenuously. You take a first and second declension adjective and put a long e on it, all of a sudden it is an adverb, strenuously. Said frustra, new word in this chapter, but in vain. We get the word frustrated from it, but don't say frustrated. The minivan, motionless, mobilis, sticks, hyreo, hyrere. It's where we get the word adhesive. Something adheres to the board. Sticks. It sticks in the ditch. Now please pay attention to this immobilis. That immobilis, with its short is, is not an ending. It's a fake ending. And as a matter of fact, if you look over here at our chart, do you see those question marks? Well, some words in Latin, in the nominative, are so desperate to have an ending, they will fake it. And that would be like some students have those names, pinguis, brevis, fortis, with a fake-o ending. In the genitive, it's real, but in the nominative with an is, it's fake-o. And that's what we have here, the nominative fake-o ending, telling us which minivan. The minivan sticks in the ditch, motionless. And so since we're talking about minivans, we're going to go with car parts. Car part number 1, alternator. Alternator, don't misspell it. Alternator, I'll spell it for you. Latin, literally the one that alternates. So there it is. Continuing on. Cirrus, non potest, is not able to move it, referring obviously to that minivan. Here it could be her, but since the minivan's not a person, we say it, even though it is feminine. Oh, Sceleste, oh, wicked one. In the vocative, because he talked directly to him, so change the US to E. And also we're substantizing it. Oh, wicked slave, oh, wicked driver. Cornelius says, the carriage, nominative subject, is in the ditch by, with, because of, from, in, on, at, your, tua, culpa, fault. Culpa, culpi, a new word in this chapter, so we get the word culpable or culprit, the fault or the blame. Here it is what we call the ablative of cause, because it is the cause of the action. The ablative of cause, a new ablative use. Because of your fault, from your fault, by your fault, the carriage is in the ditch. Quid tu faciebas, ubi quisium apropinquabat. What were you doing? Facio means to do or to make, so what were you doing? And that too was unnecessary, so he's really emphasizing, what were you doing when the sports car, the light two-wheeled carriage, it's a sports car, was approaching? Now, this is something new, so pay close attention here. This word quisium looks like it is in the nominative, but it is not. In the second declension, there is second declension neuter words. And for the second declension neuter words, the nominative ends with um. And remember the rules of neuters is that the nominative is identical to the accusative. And so therefore, in this instance, since the sports car, the light two-wheeled carriage, is our subject, it is that neuter that you find there. And remember, if it would be then to decline, quisi quisi-e, same meaning of the genitive, quisi-o, same meaning of the dative, quisi same meaning of the accusative, quisi-o, so it's only different in the nominative. The difference down here would be, if you remember from previously, nominative plural and accusative plural neuter, always end in a. Quisi-a, the sports cars do something, quisi-orm, quisi-is, quisi-I, somebody verbs the sports cars, and quisi-is. So he asks, what were you doing when the sports car was approaching? Were you sleeping? Asking a question, as we know, from that NE. So, he's asking, were you asleep on the job? Were you asleep behind the wheel? Interpellat sextus. Sextus interrupts. Cirrus, again to the BA. It is an imperfect verb. Was not sleeping, but ibat. He was going through the road calmly while the sports car was approaching. Again, sports car. Even though it looks as though it is a nominative, or I should say accusative, it is that neuter nominative that we find in the second declension. Next chapter, we're focusing on the newer words and the forms that they exist in both second declension and third. There are no neuters in the first declension. So it says, ego et Marcus spectabamus. Once you add an ego to any subject, it becomes a we. So Marcus and I were watching the sports car. So whereas previously, sports car was doing the action, sports car was doing the action, here, as that form is going to be the direct object. You see it? Nominative and the accusative are identical. You have to look at the context to see whether it's a nominative, did you say subject? Or an accusative, did you say direct object? So it says, we were watching the sports car, light two-wheeled carriage, the sports car, and quote can sometimes, as it does in this instance, does not mean because, but which. It's referring to the sports car. Was approaching very quickly. Not just quickly. Quickly would be celeriter. This is very quickly celerime. Dane, then or next, the coachman was turning away, was turning aside. You could say another translation of the imperfect began turning aside. A new verb for this chapter, verto vertere, to turn. to turn away from. The horses, so then the courier, the mailman, turned the horses towards, to, at, our carriage. The periculum was great. The danger, a new word of this chapter, and again, another neuter word. Because remember, erat is a linking verb. And on both sides of the linking verb, you're going to have nominative. Nominative subject. And then nominative complement. And so, this is neuter. And if we look at the word magnus, that's the nominative form. Second declension masculine. Magna, that is the nominative form. First declension feminine. But there's also second declension neuter. That's why we call them a first and second declension adjective. Magnum. And just like magnum, here in the nominative, here in the accusative, identical. All of the rest of the endings for second declension, whether it's masculine or neuter, are the same, except for what you see there in pink. So the danger, nominative, subject, was great. Complement, predicate, adjective. Cyrus was able. So potest is able. Pot erat was able. Vitare, to avoid the sports car. Here's the accusative direct object. You know from the context. And now, nos omnes. Nos can mean we or us. Let's go look to see our verb. Does it have a mus? Yes. Mus means we, so that tells me that is we. We all are safe and sound in Clumes because Cyrus was drove. Ago, agere, to drive or to do. In this instance, it's going to be agebat, was driving the minivan, magna arte. Ars artis artium. It is the word that is going to indicate skill, and here it is in the ablative indicating the manner. He was driving it with great skill. Your second word is starter, the starter on the car. Tum Cornelius rogat. Then Cornelius asks, in the present tense, is asking, no BA. Tu necisium spectabas marca. He is not going to take Cyrus's word. He's not going to take Sextus's word. He's going to turn to his own son and find out a third account as to what went down. Were, it's in the past incompleted. Were you watching the sports car, accusative direct object, when it was approaching? Marcus in the vocative talking directly to him. Ituero pater. Thus truly dad. Note, second declension ended with a US, we change it to an E. All other forms, like a third declension, the vocative is identical to the nominative. That's vocative talking directly to him, but it looks just like nominative. Marcus responds. I was watching, subject M. I was observing all things. Look at the omnia with that ending A. Over here we see it also occurring in the third declension neuter, ending A, ending A. Here it is question mark, and here it is question mark. Remember the rules of the neuter. Nominative is identical to the accusative. What we have here, it's what we have here, it's what we have here, it's what we have here. So this is the omnia that you find there. All things. Not all people, that would be omnes, and omnes, masculine or feminine. But all things. I was watching all things. It was the culpa, the blame, the fault of the genitive singular courier, not of Cyrus. Apostrophe S if you would like. It was Cyrus's fault. Or I should say, it was the courier's apostrophe S fault, not Cyrus's fault. Cyrus was driving ago agare, the minivan with ablative great skill. But Cornelius, the one moved. Comotus, you will learn later, is the fourth principal part of a verb, which is another kind of participle known as the perfect passive participle, having been moved by great anger, grabs the whipstick, the virgam. A bacalum is a regular stick. This virga is a stick that you use to whip the horses like a crop, and he beats the miserable coachman. So he takes his anger out. It's kind of like the statement we say, you go outside and kick the dog. Terrible, but why do people do it when they get angry? They like to take their anger out on something they can't fight back, and poor coachman Cyrus can't fight back. And so therefore, in his frustration and anger, Cornelius unfairly, unjustly, immorally takes it out on him. Your final item of the car is a fuel pump. F-U-E-L, second word, P-U-M-P. So hopefully you've learned from this chapter. Study it, learn your vocab. Thanks.